When Nina knelt down to beg me for sponsorship, I knew. She was the female lead. I had once funded her tuition. She cried, saying even this money wasn't enough for her sister's breakfast, but she'd be content. I gave her $30,000 monthly for pocket money, yet she still felt oppressed. I knew. In her eyes, I was just a fool she could manipulate, but I didn't ask for anything more. My master, Grayson, and my half-brother pitied her and hated me, thinking I oppressed the weak, thinking I didn't help those in need. After I refused to buy her a villa, she pushed me into the sea. Before dying, I heard her say, "I just wanted a home." When I opened my eyes again, I saw Nina, with red swollen eyes, kneeling, begging me. I smiled at her. This time, I'd show her how I'd play her to death. I knew she was the female lead, in a desperate situation, poor but academically gifted. To finish university, she had two options: work part-time, or beg others. For someone like Nina, working part-time was impossible, so she targeted my college roommate, me. In my past life, I was soft-hearted. As soon as I heard her story, I rushed to fund her. But I never expected to be betrayed, to be pushed into the sea, by the very person I helped. This life, I'd never let that happen again. "Amelia," she pleaded, "please help me. Your family is so wealthy, unlike me, who's only known hardship. This money is probably just your daily allowance, but it could feed me for a year." Her tear-streaked face looked pitiful. Maybe this tactic worked on others, but what about me? Haha. Just as the lunch hour began, everyone had just finished class and was heading to the cafeteria. Nina chose this moment to speak, clearly wanting passers-by to witness. Seeing that I said nothing, she continued, "If you won't help, I'll work like a beast of burden for you. I know you look down on someone as poor as me, but I have nowhere else to turn." I didn't want to hear more. I coldly laughed. "You're truly poor. But people say poverty doesn't mean lack of ambition. Why are you different? You have hands and feet. Can't you earn money yourself? Why should my money matter to you? It's not stolen. It's what my family worked hard for. Do you think just by batting your lips and saying a few words I must give you money?" Nina clearly didn't expect this response. She stood, stunned. The onlookers, who initially pitied her, began murmuring, "This girl is right. Money is what people's parents worked hard for. You can't force them to give it away." Exactly. If she worked part-time, she wouldn't be in this situation. My family isn't rich either, but I can work. Kneeling to beg others, what dignity is that? Tears welled up in Nina's eyes again. She said through gritted teeth, "I'm sorry, Amelia. I didn't expect you to be so angry. It's all my fault. Don't say such foolish things again. If you have no money, find a way to earn it. Don't act like a freeloader begging others." I continued relentlessly, causing her to cry uncontrollably. A few passing students stopped to watch. "What are you doing?" came a voice from afar. I looked up and saw my half-brother Victor. I didn't expect him here. In my past life, Na met Victor here. Her frail appearance immediately won his heart, and he repeatedly begged me to give her more money. After all, the money was from my grandmother, not from our alcoholic father, so he didn't feel guilty. Victor rushed to Nina's side and helped her up. "What's wrong? Why are you kneeling like this?" She continued crying. "It's nothing. Amelia is my college roommate. I heard her family is quite wealthy, spending nearly 1,000 yuan on breakfast, so I wanted to ask her for help. We're college roommates, but I didn't expect her to be so heartless. It's okay. She's right. This is her family's money. Why should she give it to you?" I deliberately feigned surprise. "How much I spend on breakfast is none of your business. Why are you jealous? If your eyes hurt, go to the infirmary. What does this have to do with me? You also said we're college roommates. Why discuss this in public? Why stand at the crowded cafeteria entrance making a scene to pressure me into sympathizing? In my past life, I never thought this deeply. Now recalling it, it's indeed the case." Some onlookers nearby immediately realized and nodded in agreement. That's right, what she did is too much. If I wanted to ask someone for help, I'd do it privately. Why make a spectacle in public? This girl is disgusting, begging others while causing such a fuss. If I were her roommate, even agreeing would be wrong. And not agreeing would be awkward. She's truly scheming. The murmurs grew louder. Victor frowned at Nina. Isn't it just a bit of money? What's the big deal? Why not just give it to her? I laughed. If you want to give her money, use your own. Why ask me? Victor's money, of course, comes from me. In my past life, I treated him decently as my half-brother, but he turned out to be ungrateful after I died. He didn't even glance at me, busy comforting Nina. I'll help her, Victor sneered, looking at Nina. Don't worry, I'll sponsor you from now on. I nodded. Then you can earn money yourself to sponsor her. It'll also build character. With that, I turned and strode into the cafeteria. Victor stood there, stunned. The crowded cafeteria, filled with onlookers, included two of my other roommates, Natalie and Samantha. They glanced at each other and quickly ran to me. Natalie softly asked, Amelia, what's happening? I smiled, looking at Nina with red eyes and Victor beside her. It's as you see. She tried to use the crowd to morally pressure me into helping her. It won't be easy. Samantha looked at me strangely. Why are you acting so differently today? Before, you always gave her money when she asked. True. I was a fool before. But never again, I said, looking at them. Let's go eat. I'll treat you. Natalie and Samantha immediately brightened. Though their circumstances weren't much better, they never begged me for money. The cafeteria had many sections. I led them to a restaurant inside, neither too expensive nor too cheap, but with very good flavor. During the meal, I recounted some amusing dormitory stories from the past, and we all laughed heartily. In my past life, I was blinded. This life, I'd never let that happen again. Right, Natalie suddenly said. I heard your father's company isn't doing well lately. Maybe let me invest a bit in him. Hearing this, I said, my grandmother left me some money. Why would I invest in your family? Natalie was stunned, quickly shaking her head. No. Even though I know you have some money, it's what your grandparents left you. How could I let you invest in my family? It's fine. I know the industry your father is in. If there's no issue, there will definitely be profits later. I trust your father. Anyway, this money is just sitting here. Investing in your family might even earn more. I laughed and joked with Natalie. She immediately blushed with emotion, speechless, and hugged me. Amelia, thank you so much. I waved my hand. This money is just material to me. This life, I must cherish those who truly treat me well. I turned to Samantha. Isn't your mother's health still unstable? Here, take some money from me to help her. In my past life, I clearly remember them searching the sea for me. These kindnesses aren't measurable by money. Samantha hesitated, but I cut in. You two are my best friends. This money is just a small part of mine. Don't refuse me anymore. They took a deep breath and finally nodded in agreement. After the meal, we prepared to go to class but didn't expect Victor to suddenly run over. Counselor wants to see you. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. In my past life after I agreed to invest in Nina, he reported it to the counselor. I told my two friends, you two go ahead. Natalie and Samantha seemed worried. Should we go with you? No need. Having more people won't solve anything. You two go ahead. I'll be back soon. With that, I went straight to the counselor's office. As soon as I arrived, I saw Nina sitting there, crying and stuttering. Next to her was my childhood friend Damon, also where they first met in my past life. Probably because they shared similar backgrounds, they quickly empathized and became close friends, often hanging out with Victor while I was left out. Though one was my childhood friend and the other my half-brother, they only came to me when they needed money. Amelia, you're here. The counselor smiled at me, still very patient. After all, my grandfather had invested in the school. Now that he's gone, I'm like a shareholder. In my past life, the counselor privately asked me about some matters, and I was soft-hearted, even covering for Nina. But this time, since they brought it to the counselor, I'd add fuel to the fire. You found me at just the right time. I also have something to say. The counselor nodded in surprise. Go ahead. I pointed at Nina and said, my dorm mate Nina wants to find a part-time job on campus, serving meals or cleaning restrooms. She's willing to do anything. Nina was stunned, stammering in reflex. When did I say I wanted a part-time job? I feigned surprise. Didn't you kneel down today and say you had no money and wanted my help? Since I don't have much, I thought of asking the counselor to help you find a part-time job. I didn't expect you wouldn't need it, so I was presumptuous. But if you have no money and don't want to work, do you plan to live off nothing? Victor, who had followed me here, couldn't hold back. What are you saying? What do you mean live off nothing? I turned to look at Nina. Her face flushed with embarrassment, clearly cornered. Don't want to work? Does the sky just drop manna for you? I turned to the counselor and smiled. Sir, what do you think? The counselor nodded. That's right. You can't force someone to invest in you. Part-time work is good. Our school has many students working to earn money. If you want, I'll help you find a job. The counselor turned to look at Nina. Her face immediately tensed, anxiety clear in her heart. I coldly smiled. Her nature was like a dog's, unchangeable. She wanted money but refused to work. Sir, Nina was flustered and didn't know what to say. My childhood friend, Damon, seeing the situation, quickly spoke up. Amelia, classmate Lamb also needs to study. Moreover, looking at her frailty, she's probably often sick. How can you ask her to work part-time? I coldly replied. Do I not need to study? If following your logic, all the students working part-time on campus aren't studying, then what about them? Also, you're willing to live off others but demand they don't work. My words directly hit Damon's pain. His tuition was all given by me, yet now he turned to side with others against me. How ridiculous. Classmate Lamb, do you want to work part-time or not? The counselor began to lose patience, turning to Nina. Sir, my health isn't good. If I work part-time, I'm afraid it'll trouble others. Nina lowered her head, seemingly having concocted a reasonable excuse with my childhood friend. So that's it, I said. If you feel unwell or have any illness, just tell the teacher. The teacher can call for donations to help you. As soon as I finished, Nina immediately choked, speechless. Just then the bell rang. Sir, I have to go to class. Let's discuss the part-time job later. No need for donations. I glanced at her fleeing back, sneered, bid farewell to the counselor, and left the office. After walking a bit, Nina blocked my path again. Amelia, are you angry? She looked at me, her voice full of worry. Hearing this, I burst into laughter. Angry? Why would I be angry? Your photos have already spread throughout the group. Your embarrassment, not mine. If I recall correctly, we don't have any classes today, right? If the teacher finds out you lied, what do you think he'll think of you? Nina's face changed noticeably, panic clear. She hastily explained, I only wanted to ask you for help because I had no money. If you don't want to, that's fine. No need to make things difficult for me. My childhood friend and half-brother glanced at each other, then stood on either side of Nina like two bodyguards. Amelia, why have you become like this? Damon looked at me in disbelief. You used to be kind and lovely, but now you're so sharp. I smiled. That's right. Because I was too kind and lovely before, I was taken advantage of. Can't you stand it? Then I turned to Nina. Do you want me to invest in you again? Or maybe become a mistress? Being a mistress is good. People dote on you and give you lots of money. As soon as I finished, Nina's and Damon's faces immediately paled. These words hit their deepest wounds. In reality, Nina had already been a mistress to someone else, something I didn't know until I died and my soul lingered, witnessing her become a mistress to a relative on the school's board of directors. When we first entered school, everyone in the dorm discussed college entrance exam scores. Only Nina remained silent. Then I understood she likely used this connection to get in. I'm also on the school's board. Yet I didn't know there was such a despicable person here. Sooner or later I'd expose her. As for my childhood friend, his mother was once a mistress too. She deliberately seduced his father for his wealth but was discovered by the legal wife. The wife couldn't bear it, divorced, and took all the assets, since they were hers. As a result, my childhood friend and his mother were beaten daily. Seeing him pitiful, I used my money to help him. From childhood, his tuition was all given by me. Yet now I've raised an ungrateful wolf. Sister, why have you become like this? Victor shook his head in disbelief. How could you become like this? Right, I said. I've grown up too and can't just be idle anymore. If you're free, go work part-time because from now on, I won't fund your education anymore. Victor's face immediately changed. Spoiled since childhood, he'd never worked part-time. Before he could say anything, a voice rang out. Amelia, what are you doing here? I turned and saw Natalie and Samantha approaching. Seeing them, I smiled. Nothing, just chatting with 3 good friends. Then I looked at the 3 unfortunate people in front of me and added, sorry, I have to go stroll with my roommates and can't stay to chat with you all. I left with Natalie and Samantha. Amelia, do you have any plans for the summer break? Natalie curiously asked. I suddenly remembered the companies and assets my grandmother left behind and replied, I'm preparing to take over the family business. Natalie and Samantha glanced at each other. Both knew I had some money but didn't expect me to be so straightforward. Aren't you two free too? Come work at my company. By then I can issue you internship certificates. After graduation, if you can't find a place, just come to my company to intern. In reality, their abilities aren't bad. They just haven't had the right opportunities. They both tilted their heads, seemingly pondering carefully. Or maybe not. If we really come, people might say you're biased. Why fear that? You treat me well and I'll treat you well. No problem at all. Besides, your abilities are clear. Let's see who dares to say anything. I smiled at them. Finally, they both nodded in agreement. We strolled the streets together until evening, returning to the dormitory with many purchased items. Seeing us, Nina's face immediately changed. As soon as I entered the room, I noticed her eyes fixed on the pile of things we bought. Amelia, I truly admire you, she said. Admire me, or are you jealous? I deliberately asked. Nina's face immediately tensed. Why would you think that? Although you're indeed wealthy, I only admire you. After all, these things are what your family left you. It's a pity I don't have a family like yours. I nodded. True. I have a family that left me money while you have nothing. I ignored her and turned to chat with my 2 roommates. Nina gritted her teeth, staring at them for a while. Then she turned to me. Amelia, can't you really sponsor me a bit of money? My university education depends on this money. As she spoke, she began to cry pitifully. Of course. I smiled. Hearing this, Nina's eyes immediately brightened, but Natalie's and Samantha's faces became worried. For me, money is fine, but you must come to my company to work during the summer break. That way, I have a chance to watch the drama, I said, looking at Nina with a smile. She was bewildered, not understanding. But what are you worried about? I'll not only pay you but also issue you an internship certificate. How about that? I looked at Nina, smiling. She breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly nodded. Okay, no problem. Actually, it's not about the money or part-time work, but just wanting more time with you all. All right then, start from the most basic employee position. I won't make you clean restrooms. I deliberately pretended to be magnanimous. As long as you have the internship certificate, that's fine. Nina bit her lip, then returned to her seat to continue studying. My 2 roommates looked at me in confusion. I whispered to them, it's okay. We're all in the same dormitory. We should help each other. Plus, there's a lot more to come. Seeing my mysterious attitude, they felt a bit helpless but said nothing more. After all, no one could change my decisions. In just a few days, the summer break began. Bored with nothing to do, I went to the company my grandmother left behind. Unexpectedly, as soon as I arrived in front of the company building, I ran into trouble. From afar, I saw 2 people standing there and sneered coldly. Knowing my half-brother would never stay peaceful, I approached and said, Amelia, what are you doing? Dad heard you cut off his allowance, is that right? The speaker was my father, reeking of alcohol, clearly just drunk. Next to him was my stepmother, always polite to me, probably because of the money I held. In my past life, when I was pushed into the water, she hated that she couldn't take all my money for herself. Yes, I did cut it, I said. You 2 didn't consider that he's grown up now? If I keep giving him money, isn't that spoiling him? This is clearly not good for him. Why don't you advise him to come work at my company? I'll arrange an easy job for him. Isn't that another way of supporting him? Moreover, he can get familiar with my company environment. Who knows, I might even hand over this company to him. What do you think? Hearing this, my father's and stepmother's scowling faces immediately turned to smiles. So you have such good intentions. You're really considerate. Well, go talk to him and tell him to come work at your company. Just tell him that. I still have to go into the company to handle affairs. Tell him to come straight to the company, I said. My father and stepmother happily left. Watching their backs, I narrowed my eyes and sneered. When I arrived at the company, I began to familiarize myself with the operations. The current manager was Uncle Liam, a trusted aide of my grandmother. Since I was pushed into the sea, Uncle Liam had been worried and taken care of everything for me. Perhaps he felt he'd failed my grandmother's trust, so his spirits were always low. That's why my stepmother took the opportunity to oppress him, even having her people hire a car to run Uncle Liam over. I'd settle this score this time. This time, I came to take over the company, and Uncle Liam was very delighted, teaching me many things wholeheartedly. Uncle Liam, I said. Tomorrow, a few interns will report to the company. Please pay close attention to these two people and help me with the rest, treating them as normal interns. I gave Uncle Liam a list with two names, Natalie and Samantha. These two have abilities. During the interview, please assess them carefully to arrange suitable positions for them. Uncle Liam seemed a bit embarrassed. I understood his concern and explained. Although they're my good friends, I'm arranging based on their abilities. Just rest assured. Seeing my mature attitude, Uncle Liam was surprised. After a while, he sighed and nodded. All right, no problem. The next day, after the interview, Uncle Liam completely agreed with me and arranged for Natalie and Samantha to be group leaders of the interns. That morning, I followed Uncle Liam to learn more about the company's operations. Unexpectedly, in the afternoon, Damien appeared. Amelia, he entered with a faint smile, holding a bouquet of wilting flowers. He placed the flowers on the table, his face full of complacency, certain I'd like them. But I wrinkled my face, showing disgust. These flowers are too rotten. Take them away later. Seeing this, Damien's face clearly showed embarrassment. He hurriedly hid the flowers behind his back. I just wanted to ask if I could intern at your company, he said. I feigned surprise. You also need to intern at my company? Aren't you very capable? Surely many companies want to invite you. Damien hesitated, then sighed. You know, I just want to be in the same company as you. I think if I could come to your company, we could spend more time together. I coldly laughed inwardly, probably wanting to be near Nina. But I still replied, if you want to intern at my company, that's fine. Hearing this, Damien's eyes brightened. However, I continued, but there are already enough interns at the company. If you want to work, maybe start with cleaning. I looked at him, smiling meaningfully. Damien's eyes widened in shock. What? I'm a college student. How can I clean? I pretended to think, then said, all right. Considering our acquaintance, I'll break the rules and accept you as a real intern. Thank you, he said joyfully, about to grab my hand. But I skillfully stepped back. No problem. If there's nothing else, go work. The company is busy. Don't linger here chatting. Hearing this, Damien nodded and left. That night, during dinner, Natalie and Samantha told me about Damien and Nina's situation. Those two just chat all day and don't do any work. Natalie pouted. Samantha, sitting nearby, lightly tapped Natalie's hand as a reminder. Natalie suddenly realized, looking at me worriedly. In my past life, they also told me about Damien's bad behavior. But I was blinded by his fake kindness and even blamed them. Now looking back, only these two were truly good to me. Forget them. Let them stay for now. Soon, there'll be some fun to watch. I smiled at Natalie and Samantha. They glanced at each other, then nodded in agreement. A few days later, Nina, Damien, and Victor came to find me together. Seeing the three of them, I sneered slightly. I didn't expect them to appear together, probably planning another moral coercion tactic. I leaned back in my chair and leisurely asked, you three came to intern at the company but refused to work. What's that about? Nina hesitated, then timidly spoke. Amelia, I want to ask you to advance some salary. I thought for a moment, then flatly refused. Advancing salary? That's not allowed here and there's no such rule. But I really don't have money to beg from you. Consider it me begging you. Nina looked pitifully at me. This was likely her only trick. But this tactic only fooled those two fools. Sure enough, the two fools immediately couldn't hold back. Just advance her a bit. What's the big deal? Victor looked at me in confusion. Right, Amelia, weren't you very understanding before? Why are you like this now? It's just a little money. Your company is so wealthy, advancing a bit won't hurt anyway. We've been working here all summer. Damien also urged me. I thought for a moment, then nodded. All right. But even if I advance it, it can't be much. You know the intern salary isn't high, and you've only been here a few days. I can only advance 1 month's salary. With that, I took out my phone and transferred the money to Nina. Her eyes were slightly red as she said in a wheedling tone, "Even if this money isn't enough for your breakfast, I'm still content." I coldly smiled. Really? You can only blame your low salary, not anyone else's fault. All right, the salary's advanced. Hurry up and work. My company doesn't support idlers. Nina bit her lip and left. I suddenly remembered that when I was a soul, I had overheard that Nina stayed at a nearby hotel every Friday night. Today just happened to be Friday. I looked up and saw their backs walking out. Unexpectedly, I overheard a remark from Nina. I know she sees me as a beggar to be pitied. But I won't beg for more. This is her fault. Don't think too much. In the future, when there's a chance, I'll beg for more money from her. Damien, come comfort me. Damien consoled Nina. That's right. My sister has a lot of money. Just wait. When she gives me money in the future, I'll give it to you. Hearing the words of my childhood friend and half-brother, I just saw them as two brainless fools. Coldly said, "You won't get any more either, because your salary is just that much." The three immediately froze, surprised. I was standing right behind them. "Amelia, why are you here?" Damien coughed, his face full of awkwardness. "Nothing, just some business to handle." With that, I turned and left. Later, I contacted a team of paparazzi. Likely, Nina didn't expect I'd already grasped everything about her. I told the team to wait for an opportunity to take some photos. Sure enough, they surprised me by actually obtaining the pictures. Looking at the photos in my hand, I laughed. "Nina, let's see how you'll deal with this now." I had them post all the photos online, exposing her relationship with a relative of a school shareholder. The news spread rapidly. Even though I was at the company, I knew the shareholder was implicated and immediately fired. Moreover, that afternoon, a plump woman stormed into the company, punching and kicking Nina until her face was bruised. The owner of the company, me, slowly appeared. "Oh dear, what are you doing? Why have you beaten a company employee so badly?" I deliberately intervened, blocking Nina's front. Uncle Liam also stood beside me to ensure I wasn't implicated. The woman spat a mouthful of saliva straight at Nina's face. "You filthy mistress. If it weren't for you, my husband wouldn't have been ousted from the board of directors. Just you wait." With that, the plump woman turned and left. Watching her back, I silently gave a thumbs up in my heart. She truly didn't disappoint. She was the person I'd specifically sought out. I turned back to look at Nina, feigning pity. How could this happen? Beaten so terribly, how pitiful. Before, I just joked about making money as a mistress. I didn't expect you'd actually do it. What were you thinking? Intentionally mentioning Nina's pain, her face couldn't maintain composure. "Amelia, I have some business and can't stay at the company anymore." "I'm sorry," she said, then hurriedly fled, watching her back. I coldly snorted. Damien and Victor stood nearby, hesitating for a moment, then turned to look at me. I nodded at them. "Why are you two still standing there? Hurry up and follow her." They were startled and quickly chased after Nina. I smirked lightly. Next, it was their turn. A few days later, Damien stormed into my office, furious. "What do you mean? My father's company was about to go bankrupt, and you did this? What am I and my mother supposed to do?" I coldly looked at him. "What happens to you all has nothing to do with me. You're not my family. Why should I care?" Seeing Damien's angry face, I sneered. "Moreover, it's working hours now. You're not working properly but running to my office to make a scene. My company doesn't tolerate people like you." Damien's face darkened, but after a while, he softened his tone and pleaded. "Amelia, can't you help once more? You know how hot-tempered my father is. If his company really goes bankrupt, he'll definitely mistreat me and my mother." His tone seemed pitiful, but unfortunately, I knew his true nature. "Your father's temper has nothing to do with me. Your company keeps losing money, and the investments I made haven't returned. Why should I help further? Don't say meaningless things here. Want me to give money? Never." Damien couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, "What about the feelings we've built over the years? How can you be so heartless? I'll let everyone see your true face." With that, he turned and left. Watching his back, I coldly laughed. As soon as he left, Natalie and Samantha entered the office, their faces full of worry. "What's wrong?" I smiled to reassure them. "Nothing. Don't worry, it's nothing serious." Seeing they were still hesitant, I continued, "Rest assured I can handle it. Now that you two are in my company, you must work hard. After graduation, I want you to come help me." They looked at me seriously and nodded. "Don't worry. We'll definitely do it." I waved my hand, telling them to leave. On the school side, the decision to deal with Nina had been announced. Due to her extremely despicable behavior, she was expelled. I wasn't too surprised since I already knew the outcome. But what was unexpected was that Nina asked to meet me at the beach. It seemed she couldn't bear it anymore and was planning to make a move. I also wanted to see what she would do. I prepared carefully, turned on my phone's voice recorder, then went to the beach to meet her. "What's the matter?" I looked at her standing in front of me, gaunt and haggard, her eyes full of hatred. "Why? Why were you born so wealthy? You have everything while my family has nothing." Hearing this, I feigned innocence. "This money was earned by my grandmother's hard work. She left it to me. What's wrong with that?" Nina nodded, then coldly said, "All right then. Buy me a villa, otherwise, I'll let Damien expose all your heartless and meaningless deeds online." I looked at her and laughed. "Do you know how much I've invested in your family? But when investments don't return, naturally I can't keep pouring money in. This is something any businessman understands. Don't you know that?" Nina narrowed her eyes and said challengingly, "So what? Right now, as long as you agree to one condition, I'll make sure Damien doesn't post those bad things about you online." I nodded. "All right, go ahead. What's your condition?" "Buy me a villa." "But I'm afraid you'll refuse," Nina added. "I just want a home," she said. I coldly laughed. "You want a home? What does that have to do with me? I'm not your parent. Why should I give you a home?" Her face immediately turned ugly, then suddenly went berserk. "If you won't buy it, then die. After you die, all your assets will belong to your foolish half-brother. Then won't everything be mine?" As she spoke, Nina lunged at me, pushing me into the sea. But I had been prepared and stepped aside, causing her to fall flat on her face like a dog eating feces. Nina gritted her teeth, glaring at me, then rushed to fight me. But she didn't know I had already had Uncle Liam waiting nearby with people to record the entire scene. Seeing us fighting, Uncle Liam immediately called people to intervene and separate us. I already had the audio recording, and Uncle Liam had the video. These two pieces of evidence were handed over to the police, and Nina was sentenced to 10 years in prison. When my half-brother Victor found out I'd sent Nina to prison, he came to the company to make a scene. But soon after, I reclaimed the company my father was managing. In reality, the company's shares always belonged to me, so reclaiming it was just a minor procedure. When my father and stepmother heard the news, they were furious and stormed my company to cause trouble. But Uncle Liam didn't let them bully me, and immediately drove them out. After being driven away, they drank heavily. Later, I learned their ending from hospital staff. After drinking, they drove crazily and ended up in an accident, becoming vegetative, lying in bed forever. For them, I felt no pity. Even though one was my biological father, given what he'd done to me, I owed him no kindness. As for Damien, he continued to approach me twice more to ask for investment in his family. When I refused, he posted everything online, fabricating stories about me. But the netizens weren't fools. My family's business losses meant I wouldn't invest. That was only natural. Even the news criticized Damien for a long time. Less than a week later, Damien suddenly rushed to find me, his hands covered in blood, startling me. "What did you do?" I asked, stepping back. Damien swallowed hard, shaking his head without speaking. Knowing his unstable mental state, I immediately contacted Uncle Liam to bring people to my office. "Transfer all the company's assets to me, or at least give me a sum of money. I need to leave the country quickly." He said this, approaching me. Seeing I was about to step back, he pulled out a knife and pointed it at me. I calmly tried to appease him. "All right. Want assets? I can give them. Let me get paper and pen to write. But before I could finish writing, Uncle Liam let people into my office. I quickly moved aside while Uncle Liam had people restrain Damien. What's happening? I curiously looked at Uncle Liam. He sighed, seeming reluctant. I just received news that his father, due to anger over the company's complete bankruptcy, beat his mother. Damien couldn't bear it and used a fruit knife to stab his father to death on the spot. Hearing this, I understood and looked at Damien. But his current situation wasn't surprising. He'd always shown signs of mental instability. I just hadn't noticed before. Take him away. Uncle Liam signaled to the people behind. Damien struggled but couldn't do anything. I coldly smirked, then turned to thank Uncle Liam. Thank you, Uncle Liam, I said. He waved his hand. No problem. The summer break quickly passed. Unexpectedly, so much had happened in just a few months. The stories of Damien and Nina had spread throughout the school. Many people even came to comfort me, thinking my past relationship with Damien was quite good. But I remained very relaxed and didn't take it to heart. 10 years later, when Nina was released from prison, as far as I knew, she went to find my half-brother Victor. This wasn't surprising since besides Victor, probably no one else wanted her. It's a pity that after my father and stepmother were hospitalized, Victor had completely declined. Now what good would it do for her to approach my brother? Victor often came to beg me for money, but I always refused. If he was too much, I had security guards drive him out. Finally, unable to bear it, I had people send him back to our hometown. I heard that after returning, unable to bear loneliness, Nina sought others, only to be discovered by Victor and beaten until paralyzed. Victor was imprisoned for a few years. After his release, his mental state was unstable, and he was admitted to a mental hospital. As for me, by this time I had officially taken over the entire company. Not only that, but I also expanded dozens of subsidiary companies in various other fields. One evening, bored, I had dinner with Natalie and Samantha. Now, both had become shareholders in 2 of my subsidiary companies. We ate and joked with each other. After the meal, I looked at them and said, "All right, if there's nothing else, hurry back and rest. We still have to continue making money tomorrow." How much money have you made already and still want more? Natalie and Samantha looked at me, both helplessly and laughing. I immediately nodded in affirmation. Of course. Money is the greatest sense of security. I smiled brightly. After a while, they looked at me and said, "Anyway, the 3 of us are a team. Listening to you, we'll continue as we have for the past 10 years. Standing shoulder to shoulder, I believe one day our names will shine brightly among the crowd." Thank you all for listening to the story. Don't forget to follow for the latest stories.